I'll kick it off here. No food references in this talk, unfortunately, so we'll see how it goes. So I'm here just to do a bit of introduction to who we are and why we're all sitting up here. And Hemant and Tamar are also going to help me out in that introduction. So I'll just start off with a bit of a history of the DPDK Technical Board and the technical steering of the DPDK project. So back when DPDK.org started out in about 2013, the DPDK project was technically all consensus driven. Okay, everybody on the list had to agree, and patches only got merged as long as there was nobody strenuously objecting to them. This consensus is great in theory, but it did lead to slower decision making and slower development. So it's kind of suboptimal, especially as the community grew. In the early days, when it was a fairly small community, it worked well enough. But as the numbers went up and we had hundreds of contributors, consensus-driven wasn't always going to cut it. So because of that, we set up a technical board to allow some trusted and respected contributors to help make decisions on the behalf of the community when consensus couldn't be reached on the mailing list. Then whenever the whole DPDK project moved to the Linux Foundation, the technical board itself was codified inside the project charter. Okay, so the technical board's role and responsibilities are all given in that DPDK project charter in the Linux Foundation. So who we are on the technical board, there's 9 members of the technical board. The number is not fixed. It started out at 7, I think, and then went up to 9. So the 9 members are given here. I'd like to say in order of importance as I'm first, but it's actually in alphabetical order. So there's myself, Hemant, who is also here, there. Jean Blanc, who couldn't be here. Jared is here on stage as well. Constantine, Olivier, Stephen Heminger, Thomas, obviously, and Wan Han. Okay, so we've got quite a disparate crew spread geographically throughout the world and coming from a number of different organizations as well. So they're the 9 current members. There are 4 of us here on stage, and we've also got Ferry here as a tree maintainer, another important aspect of the technical leadership of the DPDK project. And Tamar will talk a bit more about the tree organization structure in a minute or two. So the final thing I'll just talk about is what the technical board actually does on a week-by-week basis. Okay, so we hold bi-weekly meetings, approximately. Okay, these are organized by a different person each time. What we discuss at these meetings is we see about looking at approving the inclusion of new functionality, libraries or device drivers into DPDK. So if somebody proposes a new library for DPDK, Tech Board will generally take a vote on whether to accept that or not. We also similarly take a vote just on to approve any new subtrees that need to be added to the project, or staging trees, anything in that line. Committers and maintainers for those trees also gets managed by the technical board itself to make sure that we have adequate technical oversight over each of the trees that are created in Git for the project. Similarly, sub-projects, Tech Board also gets referred to. Not that we've had many of those coming to us over the last while, but that's codified in the charter that we also get a say in the creation of new sub-projects. However, once those new sub-projects under the DPDK umbrella are created, they each then get their own technical board, and we no longer have any oversight or say in their running. They're technically independent. The Tech Board itself for DPDK only really has responsibility for the DPDK tree and its staging or draft trees on dpdk.org. Then, in terms of things that don't require a vote, whenever there's discussion on the mailing list about some technical topic, the Tech Board can sometimes take that on board at their meetings and provide some input back to the mailing list on what the technical board members feel about the particular technical topic. And finally, just call out there, if there is some point of contention, the technical board has got the final decision, the final say on what happens whenever a consensus cannot be reached. One last thing I'd also say is the technical board meetings are open. They're held in public on IRC every 2 weeks, so anybody is quite able to log on to that channel. It's DPDK board on Freenode, and can make contributions and comments. So it's not just technical board members who attend. However, only technical board members actually get a vote in it. Okay, so over to you, Hemant.
Thank you
for your update.
Yep. So Typically, most of us are aware that DPDK as a user space library is a BSD license project. And generally we prefer BSD license in user space. There are some exceptions in the DPDK, like there are kernel modules which are naturally GPL v2 license. There are some pieces of code which are common between kernel and user space. They are dual license. When used in kernel, they are a GPL. When used in user space, they are being treated as a BSD license. And there are few occasions where developers are requesting some license exception to be included into their code which is not compliant to the standard BSD3. They want that code to be included in the DPDK. The usual process we follow, that once the technical board approves it, the technical board has to make a request to the governing board, and it's the responsibility of the governing board to approve any license exception, because it means change in the DPDK charter. Recently, we requested a Linux Foundation to conduct a license screening of the DPDK code. No serious problem found, but we found some discrepancies. Like there were differences in the BSD license text and its flavor. Like some people were using BSD2, some BSD3 with some different languages. Some people were even using BSD4. And in some places, BSD was getting mixed with some other similar licenses. There were files which are completely missing the total license text. They were only having copyright, and some were not even having copyrights. So right now we are discussing how to take actions and how to fix this problem in the DPDK. Again, there is no serious problem right now what we have seen, but we want to avoid this kind of problem in future. So going forward, we are right now planning to move towards SPDK based licensing, so that we can put just a short identifier to identify a license to be added to each file. And as a developer, we are actually not lawyers. We are legally aware, but we are not lawyers. So whenever a new submission comes to DPDK, it's very difficult for the maintainers and the reviewers to check whether they are completely following all the the right license text and right things or not. So what we are right now looking for some contribution from the community that can be make some kind of automated script, like plug to our patchwork or something like check patch. We can also check whether there are any licensing issues with this code or not. So we welcome any volunteers who are going to help us with this aspect.
Okay. So can you hear me? Yeah. This licensing applies to a lot of Git trees, not only for DPDK, but also the projects which are hosted on dpdk.org. For instance, we have the application package.jn DPDK and SPP, as you can see at the bottom left. We have also some tools to help working on DPDK, and all the other Git trees on dpdk.org are for DPDK, obviously. We have the main tree, which is dpdk.git, which I maintain with Feru, which is here. Okay, so we are committers on it. And there is also a very important one, which is the dpdk stable.git tree. This one hosts the branches for the maintenance. There are some branches, for instance, for the 1611, which is LTS, but there are also some branches for, let's say, 1702, which is not maintained anymore because it is too old. And the new LTS will be the 1711 release. So we have two maintainers for now for stable maintenance, who are Luca Bocassi and Renan Liu. Probably we will need more maintainers for stable maintenance for new releases in the future. So every proposal, every volunteers are very welcome. Okay, on the right you can see there are some subtrees and draft trees. Draft trees are just some space to elaborate some special features waiting for integration in the main tree. And subtrees are a different thing. There are trees for organization of committing patches and just to spread the workload and to have some trees focus on specific stuff. Like for instance, the biggest trees is the dpdk nextnet tree, which is also maintained by Feru, Thank you, Ferry, for your hard work on it.
Thank you.
It's very a big hard work. So there are also some other subtrees. We're adding some new subtrees every new releases because we are scaling. And the new stuff is that we are adding a new layer, new level below the DPDK NextNet tree because it is really too big. So now we are going to have some sub-trees. The first one will be for Intel networking drivers and Mellanox networking drivers. And we add also subtrees for Virteo and vhost drivers and libraries. So this one will be now below the NextNet tree. Okay. How does it work? We have 4 releases per year. So now it is fixed. The release happened on February, May, August, and November. And one of them is LTS. At least it will be only the second LTS. At first, we agreed to have one LTS maintained for 2 years. And in the Dublin Summit this year, we agreed to have one LTS this year for 1711. So it means the current status is that we have one LTS per year. And it is maintained for 2 years. But obviously, if someone wants to maintain it for longer, it's welcome. Okay, now I want to talk about what are the roles of maintainers. When we talk about maintainers, at first it is about maintaining a driver or library. So it means when we have some question on these libraries, the maintainer is the first contact to answer the questions. And the maintainer obviously can review the code, but he can also ask someone else to review the code. His really first role is to make sure that the code is well reviewed and we are not forgetting someone on the side. So just making sure we are doing some good progress and everything is released on time. And after, there is a role of committers. Committers have right to push patches on the Git trees. So obviously they apply patches, but it's really an easy task. It is more hard to look at how the reviews were done. Can we trust this review? If we need, who can we ask to take care of a review? Ideally, we should not have to ask for reviews. It should be something done naturally by everyone. I think everyone contributing some code should try to do some reviews for code of others. So it's one of the main problems currently. We have not enough reviewers. So please join the force and do more reviews. And about the role of committers, there is another rule. Sometimes we have to reject some patches, even if there are some small reviews, because we are the last level of checks before applying a patch, and sometimes we can realize, oh, maybe there are some issues which were not really reviewed before. So it's a hard job, but someone has to do it. And below, you can see how is the life of a patch. So at first, you do your patch on your computer, then you send it to the mailing list. When you send the patch to the mailing list, it is automatically integrated in the Patchwork database. Patchwork is a website. You can view which patches are pending there. Then these patches can be integrated in a subtree or directly in the main tree if there is no subtree for it. And at the end, this patch can be also integrated in the stable tree. How can we know that a patch is a candidate for the stable tree? It is the work of the maintainers of the maintenance release, but we can help them by putting a tag in our patches saying, oh, this one is for stable. It is cc_stable@dpdk.org. And it is also the job of committers to take care that this tag is well set for patches fixing a bug in previous releases. Next, I want to talk about tools. As I said, we have Patchwork to manage the patches we have, which are pending. So I think it is the main tool. And this tool can also show some test report results for some CI. We have also a new CI with UNH, the University of New Hampshire. We are setting up this community lab. It is not running yet, but probably it will be there at the beginning of next year. And hopefully we will be able to review the performance evolutions from this lab. If we find a bug or a performance degradation, we can open a bug on Bugzilla. Bugzilla is a new thing, and we are going to use it really for the next release. So starting now. And the last tool, if you want to, if it's not a bug, but you have an enhancement request or an enhancement plan, you can add it to the roadmap. Before adding to the roadmap, you can just talk about it on the mailing list, and then we can update the website to reflect it for the official roadmap. Sometimes it has to be discussed by the technical board, and all which is on this roadmap on the online on the website is obviously accepted. Talking about the roadmap, we have a long list for 1802 and next releases. The most important items will be probably the memory management rework, which is in progress, the multiprocess rework, and we are going to have some true hot plug, and new device libraries for new class of devices like baseband or InfiniBand. And one of the hot stuff also are SmartNICs, FPGA support, which will be discussed today in the next talks. And we'll see maybe some BPF support. Okay, now it's time for questions.
Well, before we get to questions from the audience, I have one initial question about when's 1711 coming out? I think a lot of people want to know that.
So thank you, Bruce. It's a nice question. Actor Studio. Very nice. So it's fortunate because I brought my computer, my good old computer with me, so maybe you can do it now. But in the meantime, you can continue with questions.
Okay. So folks from the audience have questions they want to push to those of us sitting here in the hot seats while Thomas sees about doing the actual release live on stage.
Aaron has a question.
So is there a microphone? Yeah.
So there was a comment earlier about licensing and having policies for getting newly licensed code in. Is there anything for like patent protected or other forms of protected software that people would try to put in? What the policy is? Anything like that?
So, to be honest, right now we are not looking into, we have not yet started into that direction. We have just started discussing with the Linux Foundation, the initial screening done. Now we are doing more consultation with respect to governing board about various other legal protection methods. So typically we leave it to the individual companies to discuss with their lawyer, like whoever is submitting. So is there anything else you want to add?
No, I think in terms of guidance on licensing and patents and things like that, that's much more in the remit of the governing board and the Linux Foundation legal representatives. They just provide the guidance to the technical board, who will then just take that into account when we're looking at patches, reviewing patches, and maintainers and others. We look to the governing board for the clear guidance and rules that we have to follow on that. It's not really in the tech board's purview because, as Hanan said, we're not lawyers. Any other questions from the floor?
Thank you, Thomas. Do we have any plan to add any new tool for code review? I mean,
do you have plans for tools for code review?
Yes.
I'm not aware of any plans for additional code review tools on dpdk.org. However, if you want to propose the addition of some, it can be discussed inside the community, and we can take community feedback on that.
We have some discussion about using Garrett quite a few times, but somehow like there are a lot of objections in migrating to Garrett.
Yeah, I think different people like things done in different ways.
As a person doing lots of reviews in mailing lists, mostly I'm okay with patch, so that's working fine for me at least. I don't know.
Yeah, I've no.
We're trying to follow what Linux kernel list does mostly. So.
Yeah. And that shows this can scale. So I think it's okay.
So this one's for Hemant. You said something about SPDX-based licensing. What is that?
So typically what you do, right now the way you have seen DPDK files, you have a copyright statement. After that you have a text for BSD license. And there is a chance of error that you can misspell or you can put the text differently. In case of SPDX, you just put a single liner identifier, what kind of license the code is, and then you match it with the SPDX, the predefined SPDX license string. For example, there is a string for GPL v2, there is a string for BSD3, there is a string for dual, BSD plus GPL. So that will protect us from any error with respect to the licensing text, and that will protect us that if you are changing the flavor of BSD.
So it's basically switching from having the license text to having a license tag that you can then look up in the SPDX license database.
Several open source projects are following this SPDX methodology these days.
Hi. Do we have a formal feature roadmap published? What are going to be the features coming and when time frame?
Yes, we do. There was a link actually on the slides, I think, to where the roadmap is published on the website. Now, it's not a complete roadmap and it's not a committed roadmap. What it is instead is a number of the various contributor companies, Intel, Mellanox, Cavium, NXP, etc., will often post out, in advance saying, look, these are the kind of features we're looking at doing in this time frame. And then these are aggregated together and pushed on an unofficial roadmap of DPDK. So you'll find that on the website. It's particularly useful if you're thinking of looking in a particular area and you want to check if somebody else is looking in that area as well. You can go to the roadmap and just see, is it there? And then you can find out who's working on it and try and combine efforts. The reason we started doing this was in the past, we found that there were actually multiple competing implementations being worked on at the same time by different companies who just didn't know that each other one was working on it. So we decided it was much better to publish out sooner what sort of thing you're looking at without making a commitment, and this way we can reduce duplication of effort.
Actually, we did discuss in the Dublin Summit about it. Like in the roadmap page, we can also put the wish list items.
That is already there now. Yeah. There's a few wish items there. Previously, it was only Intel releasing roadmap. Now there are more vendors doing it. NXP sent very recently. So it is kind of up to vendors publish their roadmaps.
Even in fact, from a user point of view, like if you are an end consumer for DPDK and you are looking for a particular feature, you can put them in a wish list and let's see who can implement it.
A follow-up question, is there any thought around integrating several of the roadmap items into one sort of higher level use case? For example, you pick NFV, maybe there is something like CPE or some use case you want to run after. Is there some thought around putting those together, or it's completely outside of DPDK scope?
I don't think there's any plans for anything like that. The roadmap is just as published by the individual contributors.
Let me try to put, typically the DPDK layer is about drivers, right, and the framework for any application. We are just giving the example applications, and anything, generally what we believe the end application is outside the purview of DPDK. It can be a sub-project, like if somebody want to contribute.
Yep. There are already a few repositories under dpdk.org as an application ones.
Another question? Just there in the middle.
Some of the devices require a firmware binary in a file. So the DPDK does not deliver, allows a way to deliver firmware binaries. What are your thoughts on how we should do this?
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Yeah, so the Linux has a similar mechanism where there is a different repository where you can publish the firmware.
Oh, okay, this is about binary firmware and how to manage that.
Yeah. So I think it's good to have that such a feature where we don't need to run around to see what's a specific firmware for that specific device, right? So if we can store that in as a binary blob, then people can take.
Yeah, we submit the firmware to Linux firmware.git upstream. However, what happens is, those releases may not align with the DPTK releases. So there could be a case where customer has a DPTK release available, but they don't have the firmware file. They don't have access to the firmware file.
Can't you host that firmware in your website or put that?
That's what we are doing, but it's not very customer friendly. They have to go to a different place to get the firmware. Most of the people don't even realize that they need to go get the firmware file from a different location.
I'm not sure about, I don't know what tech mode members will say, but not sure about hosting binaries firmwares in DPTK. I don't know.
Maybe separate repository where under the dptk.gov.
If there will be separate repository, why not again a GitHub or any something? I don't know.
Kamal, you look finished?
Yeah,
At least.
I think it's done. So, as I invite you in the email, please, we can see this release was the biggest one. Where is my mouse? Yeah. We have 1,370 patches in this release. There are a lot of features, the biggest list of features ever, and a lot of new contributors, a lot of patches from a lot of companies. So now we can be very happy for this release, and please let's applaud every contributor for this release.
And I think a special congratulations to Tama and Farah and the other tree maintainers. These guys go through and do an awful lot of work. I was briefly maintainer of the NextNet tree, and I can tell you it is not an easy task at all. There's a lot of patches coming through being reviewed for NextNet, for the main tree, and for the various other subtrees and crypto trees. So congratulations to these guys. I think another round of applause for Tama and Farah and the other maintainers is powerful too. They go through a huge amount of work. Well done, guys. So any other questions? We still have a couple minutes left if people want to ask more questions of us from the audience.
I think I'm going to move people along, so we've got a lot on this morning, if that's okay. We can do questions at the panel. We move along and then do questions at the panel. If we've got no more questions, we can move along. Is that okay?
He's saying if you don't have a question, we can just move to the next presentation.
Yeah. Can I have a quick comment before moving? Sorry.
Okay.
DPTK is growing, number of comments and contributors are increasing. That's great. We are happy about it. But the maintenance work is also increasing. I just would like to stress what Thomas said. We need more reviews. Everybody wants their feature in. That's great, and that should go in. But also, people should contribute in reviews, I believe. Since I'm different time zone, I know Thomas didn't sleep well for next 2 weeks, perhaps. So that's not very sustainable, and we need more community support. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Maybe ask Hemant to stay on the stage for the next talks.